I'd been coming to the same auto shop for 3 months. The kind of place that smelled like old rubber and burnt coffee. The radio was always playing something from the 80s, low enough that you could still hear the hiss of air compressors and the sound of someone laughing 2 bays over. That morning, the sky was colorless, just gray light pushing through the windows. I was leaning against the counter, watching her work. She wasn't supposed to be the one fixing cars. The first time I met her, I thought she was just there to handle the front desk. Calm, efficient, polite. But then she walked out back, tied her hair up, and started pulling off an engine cover like it was nothing. That was the moment something shifted. Her name was Mara, mid-40s, maybe. Wore a dark blue coverall that had her name stitched above the pocket, sleeves rolled just enough to show a watch that looked older than me. There was a steadiness to her. The kind of quiet you notice only when everything else stops making noise. "You're early," she said, glancing up at me from under the hood. I didn't have anywhere else to be. That was true. I didn't say it like it was sad, but it probably sounded that way. She smiled, small, almost hidden. That's one way to start the day. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I folded the edge of the invoice paper over and over until it formed a tiny white strip. She caught me doing it. Didn't say anything, just shook her head a little, amused. She had this habit of speaking while half distracted, like her attention was split between the engine and the person next to it. "You can wait inside if you want. Coffee's old but still coffee." I didn't move. "I'll stay here. Don't want to miss the show." That's when she looked up for real. Eyes steady, one brow slightly raised. "You're not the type to just watch, are you?" I didn't know how to answer that. Maybe because I wasn't sure what kind of type she thought I was. Something hung in the air after that, not heavy, not awkward, just unspoken. She worked quietly, explaining a few things I didn't understand but wanted to. I found myself watching her hands, the way they moved with certainty, like she trusted them more than she trusted words. At one point, a strand of hair slipped loose from her bun, caught the light. Without thinking, I reached up, then stopped halfway, hands still in the air like I'd remembered my place too late. She noticed. Didn't flinch, didn't pull away. Just said softly, "You learn a lot from looking close, but not everything." The sound of rain started against the tin roof, gentle, persistent. When the work was done, she wiped her hands on a rag and said, "You should drive more. Cars don't like being left alone." I smiled. People either. That earned me a look, not quite a smile, not quite pity, something in between. She handed me my keys. Our fingers brushed, and I felt that flicker. The kind that feels like recognition more than attraction. Like two people who didn't expect to be seen that morning suddenly were. I left before I could say anything that would ruin it. But halfway down the block my phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. "Next time bring coffee, black. No sugar." I didn't have to guess who it was. The rain hit harder. I slowed down, reading the message again, letting it sit there like a door half open. And for the first time in a while, I didn't want to be anywhere else. The next time I saw Mara, she was sitting outside the shop on a wooden crate, coffee cup balanced on one knee. Hair loose this time. The morning air smelled like metal and wet pavement. I held up 2 cups. "Black." "No," she glanced up, a faint smile flickering before she took the cup. "So you can follow instructions." "I can learn," I said. Dangerous thing to say to a mechanic. We sat there in the quiet. She didn't ask why I'd come back. I didn't have an answer ready anyway. The steam from her coffee curled into the cool air, disappearing just before it reached her face. She stared at it like she was thinking about something else entirely. "My ex-husband used to say coffee was my only real relationship," she said after a while, tone light, but her eyes didn't match it. I looked at her hands. The faint oil stains that wouldn't wash off, the silver band still marking her ring finger, even though the ring was gone. "You still talk to him?" She shook her head. "No need to. The silence works better for both of us." She said it like she'd made peace with it, but her jaw tensed just enough to give her away. I wanted to ask more, but I didn't. Some stories feel like borrowed tools, not yours to use, just to hold for a second. Instead, I said, "Quest that makes me your rebound coffee partner." She laughed quietly. A sound that felt unpracticed. You're too young to be this bored. I'm not bored, I said. Just trying to stay somewhere that feels real for a bit. That made her look at me differently. Slower, softer. Like she was rethinking what kind of person she thought I was. Inside the garage, she asked me to hand her a wrench. I passed it over, our fingers brushing again. Just a second, but the same small current as before. She didn't pull away this time. Neither did I. The rain started again, faint. A kind of background rhythm that made the moment feel closer than it should have been. You should probably stop hanging around here, she said quietly, eyes still on the engine. People will talk. I wanted to ask what about us. But that would have meant admitting there was an us. Instead, I said, you worried about people talking, or about what they might get right. That earned me a silence. One that said more than words could. She stood upright, wiped her hands, and said, You're too young to sound that sure. I'm not sure, I said. That's the problem. When I left that afternoon, she stopped me at the door, handed me a rag I'd forgotten on the workbench. Keep it, she said. You'll bring it back. Her fingers grazed mine, lingering half a second too long. It was just a rag, nothing romantic about it. But her voice, the way she said you'll bring it back, it stayed with me. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. I started coming later in the day. After her rush hours, when the shop was half dark and quiet, tools neatly stacked like sleeping animals, she never asked why. I never explained, it just became a rhythm. The hum of the heater, her voice low against the sound of rain. That evening, she was bent over a tire, hair tied up again, a few strands coming loose against her cheek. I caught myself staring longer than I should. She noticed, didn't say anything, just tilted her head slightly, the smallest acknowledgement. You look tired, I said. I am. Long pause. Then why not close early? Because then I'd have to think about why I'm closing early. She looked at me when she said that. I looked away first. I helped her clean up, wiping down the counter, stacking the rags. She watched me amused. You don't work here, you know? I like being useful. You're too young to need to be useful to anyone. There it was again, that wall, thin but steady. She kept putting it between us like a mechanic testing a wire, making sure nothing short-circuited. I wanted to tell her I didn't care about the age thing, or what people thought, but the words caught somewhere between my throat and my hands. So instead, I asked, You ever think about leaving this stilled? Her hands stilled. Once. Then I didn't. Why? Because the person I'd have left for didn't ask. She said it so quietly I almost missed it. The bell above the shop door jingled. My friend, Nate, stepped in, grinning loud, breaking the spell like cold air through a crack. Man, I've been calling you. You ghosting everyone now. Mara straightened immediately, slipping back into something neutral. The way her shoulders shifted, I felt the distance return like a draft. Your car's ready, said, voice calm again, handing me the keys. Drive safe. I wanted to stay, explain something that didn't have words yet. But Nate was already cracking jokes, talking about weekend plans, about girls I didn't care about. When I turned back to her, she was already walking away, wiping her hands clean, eyes fixed anywhere but me. Later that night, I found myself parked down the street from the shop, headlights off. Just sitting there. She was still inside, light spilling from the open bay, her silhouette against the glow. She was drinking something, coffee, probably. Standing there like someone who couldn't quite make herself go home. I thought about getting out. About walking in and saying something that would change everything. But I didn't. The next morning, when I came by, the shop was closed. A handwritten sign taped to the door, closed for the day. Sorry for the short notice. Below it, in smaller handwriting, just for me. Or maybe not. Don't wait around. Some things fix themselves. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the note, feeling the weight of what wasn't said pressing harder than any confession could. Her words stayed with me. Not for what they meant, but for what they almost did. She didn't open the shop for 3 days. On the 4th, the lights were on again. I saw her through the window, sweeping the floor like nothing had happened, like she hadn't left me standing there reading a note that felt more like a warning than an apology. I told myself I'd just drop by, return the rag she lent me. That was it, nothing more. When she looked up and saw me, she didn't seem surprised. Just tired. You didn't listen, she said softly. I don't do well with instructions. That earned me the faintest smile. One that didn't reach her eyes. We ended up walking down to the pier after she closed. Neither of us said why. The air smelled like salt and rain, and the boards creaked under our steps. She carried a thermos of coffee, handed it to me wordlessly. I drank first. It was cold, bitter, perfect. For a while we watched the water. The waves were small, folding over themselves like secrets. You ever think about how quiet it gets after you fix something? She asked. Like the silence means you did it right. Or that it just stopped complaining. She smiled at that, but I could hear the heaviness under it. I wanted to ask what had happened those 3 days, why she'd closed up, why she'd written that note. But all I said was, you were gone. She didn't look at me. You noticed. Yeah. That's dangerous. How? Because I noticed you noticing. Her voice trembled. Just once. There was a long pause. Not the comfortable kind we'd had before. This one hummed with something unsteady. She leaned against the railing, arms folded. You remind me of someone, she said. From a long time ago. Someone who used to think I was more than I am. Maybe he was right. No, she said quickly. He just didn't stay long enough to find out. The wind carried the words away before I could respond. I wanted to reach for her, but my hand only made it halfway. That same invisible barrier between us, familiar now. She saw the movement, didn't step back, didn't move forward. Just breathed out, eyes on the sea. You shouldn't look at me like that, she whispered. Like what? Like you're trying to remember me. Something in her voice cracked then, not loudly, but enough. I can't do this, she said. Not again. Not with someone who still has time to leave. Her hands tightened on the railing, knuckles pale in the gray light. I took the thermos from her, set it gently beside us. I'm not here to fix you, Mara. She looked at me then, really looked. No, she said. But you're here, and that's what scares me. The silence after that was almost unbearable. Rain started again, soft, relentless. She didn't move. Neither did I. She turned her head slightly, eyes meeting mine, a question rising between us. Unspoken, trembling, impossible to answer. And before either of us could decide what to do next, she looked away. Maybe that was the moment I knew some questions aren't meant to be answered. Only felt. I didn't see her for a week after the pier. No note this time, just absence. Clean, quiet, final. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. That I was just a customer, a temporary habit. But every morning I still took the long way to class, passing the shop like maybe she'd be there again. Wiping her hands on a rag, pretending not to see me first. She wasn't. The garage door stayed half open, as if someone had started to open it and changed their mind. By the 5th day I gave in, walked up, peered inside. Everything was the same. The smell of oil, the cluttered counter, the cup she always used sitting upside down to dry. Then I heard laughter. A man's voice, steady, low. She stepped out from the back with him. Older, wearing the same kind of coveralls she did. He reached out and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, casual, familiar. She didn't see me at first. But when she did, her smile faltered. Not guilt, not shock, just awareness. Didn't expect to see you, she said. I forced a small smile. Didn't expect to come. This is Mark, she said. He's helping with some things around here. He nodded, polite. Mara talks about her customers. Says you're a regular. Something like that, I said. The air between us thickened, too formal now, too many words where there used to be pauses. I left before she could explain what didn't need explaining. That night, I sat in my car again, engine off, listening to the rain hit the windshield. Every sound reminded me of her voice. The steady rhythm of her hands against metal. The way she'd said, because I noticed you noticing. Now, it felt like she'd stopped. 3 days later, she texted. You left your jacket here. I stared at it for a long time. Then type, keep it. Looks better on your side of the line. I didn't send it. Deleted it instead. I told myself I didn't want to sound bitter. But that wasn't it. I didn't want to sound hurt. When I finally went back, she was alone again. Sitting on a stool, sipping from a thermos, watching the floor like it had something to say. I almost walked in. My hand even brushed the door handle. But I didn't. Something about her posture, shoulders drawn in, eyes far away, told me she was somewhere I couldn't reach right now. So I turned away. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was late. The kind of late that makes everything sound softer. The streetlights hummed, throwing pale circles onto the wet pavement. I didn't plan to stop by. I was just driving, trying not to think, when I saw her garage lights still on. She was sitting on the floor, back against the wall, a toolbox open beside her, not working. Just sitting there. The look on her face wasn't sadness exactly. More like someone who'd been holding a thought too long. When she saw me, she didn't flinch, just nodded toward the other stool. "You can sit, if you want." I did. We didn't talk at first. The only sound was the slow drip of rain from the roof. I could smell the faint mix of coffee and motor oil. Her scent, somehow both sharp and warm. Finally, she said, "Is gone, Mark, he just came to help for a while." I nodded, trying not to look like I cared too much. He seemed close. She gave a small laugh. "He was, once, a long time ago. He's not the reason I left the shop closed. I am." I waited. She looked down at her hands. "You make it easy to forget how old I am, and that scares me." I wanted to tell her that I didn't notice her age, only her presence, the way the room shifted when she spoke, the calm gravity she carried. But I didn't. Instead, I said quietly, "You think I don't get scared?" She looked at me then, and something in her eyes changed, less guarded, more tired. "You'll get over this," she said. "That's what time's for." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe some things just stay." She exhaled, shaking her head, but she didn't argue. We sat like that a long time. The clock ticked faintly from her desk. A wrench rolled slightly across the floor, metal against concrete. "Finally," I said, "when you closed the shop, I thought I did something wrong." "You didn't," she said. "You just reminded me I could still feel something. And that's complicated." She glanced up, half a smile. "You shouldn't be the one helping me remember that." "I don't mind." "I do," she said. But the words came out softer than she meant them to. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the silence, maybe the way her hands trembled when she set down her mug. But I reached out, just lightly, resting my hand over hers. She didn't pull away. Didn't move closer, either. Just breathed out, the kind of breath that sounds like surrender. For a moment, everything felt still, like the air itself was holding its breath with us. Then she looked up, eyes glistening, and said quietly, "You'll be okay." And for some reason, it sounded less like reassurance and more like goodbye. I didn't answer. Just nodded, because sometimes, the only thing left to say is nothing at all. Time passed the way it always does, quietly, without asking permission. Summer softened into early autumn, the sea turned gray again. The mornings cooled. I still brought my car by sometimes, pretending it needed something. A filter, an oil change, an excuse. But most days, we didn't talk about cars anymore. Now, she'd be the one handing me the coffee. "Still black. Still no sugar. Your hands don't look like they've much work lately," she teased once, nodding toward my clean nails. "I've been trying to fix less," I said. She smiled. "The kind that stayed. Good, maybe you're finally learning." There was no sudden change between us, no confession, no grand moment where everything turned. It was smaller than that, realer. Some mornings she'd leave the shop door open at 8:47 a.m., just before I passed by on my way to class. Sometimes she'd wave, sometimes she wouldn't, but she knew I'd look, and I always did. One rainy evening, months later, I found her on the same pier where we'd once stood in silence. The same boards creaking under our shoes, the same smell of sea air and rust. She poured coffee from her thermos and handed me a cup. "It's cold," she said. "I don't mind." We stood there for a while, watching the water fold into itself. "I kept thinking I'd forget this," she said softly. "Us. The small parts of it. And I didn't." She turned, eyes searching mine for something that wasn't an answer, just honesty. I reached for her hand, slower this time, no hesitation, no electricity. Just warmth. She didn't pull away. "Still scared?" I asked. "Every day," she said. "But it's quieter now." I nodded. "Good, I can live with quiet." Later, when we walked back toward the shop, she stopped under the streetlight, her hair catching a faint shimmer from the drizzle. You still watch too much, she said. And you still pretend not to notice. Her laugh, small, dry, familiar, filled the space between us. That was enough. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it just settles. Like dust on the floor, like morning light through a cracked window. We never called it anything, we didn't have to. Every time she looked up from an engine now, she'd just smile slightly and say, "You're still here." And I'd answer, "Yeah, I guess I am." If someone asked what we were, I wouldn't know how to explain. Maybe it's better that way. Some things aren't meant to be defined, just lived.